Hello friendlies, I'm Carolyn and this is my life in beautiful Alaska still. Today's episode of FAQs, I'm going to address 3 new questions about RV living. Number 1, I hear all the time people are like, isn't it a hard life? How can you live such a hard life? And I'm going to address that question. And actually all 3 questions are kind of going to be addressed kind of as I go. I'll try to keep them in order for you, for those of you who might be interested in each individual question. But number 1, is this a hard life? Number 2, how do I decide where I'm gonna go next? And number 3, what advice do I have for newbies who might be just starting out, who are thinking about starting out? And in this video, I'm going to be covering some practical things. And as one of my patrons and friends just wrote, I'm also going to be covering kind of some of the existential elements of it. You know, some of the more reasons why. You know, kind of some of the more kind of like, I don't know, esoteric, I guess. I guess existential is the best way to put it. Some of the more esoteric, maybe motivational, overcoming obstacles and fears kind of parts of RV living, in addition to just the practical things that I'm going to be covering. All right, so let's go sit down and then let's have a chat and answer some of your questions. Oh, what a rough life. And that brings me to the first question. Is full-time RVing a rough life? And I'm always a little surprised when I get that question. Why would anybody want to live such a hard life? And boy, it really looks like a hard life. And I'm not really sure I understand the question. I don't really understand what some people think is so hard about this life. I mean, have I had some difficult times? Yeah, but don't we all? Whether you're living in a house and your hot water heater busts and you have to take care of that, or a tree falls through your roof. Happened to a friend of mine not too long ago, through the bedroom in the morning, and had to deal with that. Or when I was remodeling a house and my kitchen was torn apart for 2 months. You know, I mean, these are all challenges that we have to overcome in life. And RVing is no different. The most challenging times I have had RVing are when I've had to stay in auto repair shops for extended periods of time. Twice in Matilda for 2 weeks. And yeah, that was hard. That was hard. But again, it's 2 weeks out of, a month out of 2 years. And it was an old RV, and that part was challenging. But barring, mechanical issues, which, yeah, I guess if you want to judge RVing life by the mechanical issues that you have, then yeah, okay, it's a hard life. But that's not the reality for everybody. And I've been in Phoenix now almost a year, knock on wood, and haven't spent 2 weeks in an auto repair shop yet. So a lot of that depends on the reliability of the rig that you buy. It depends a lot on just the homework that you do beforehand. Although, even that, you can do all the homework in the world, and sometimes you just don't know if you're buying a lemon. As I've said before, and as many of you have pointed out, sometimes even the brand new RVs are in the shop all the time. I don't know how many stories I've heard about that. So if that's what you mean by hard life, yeah, there are challenges. Maybe you mean, is traveling all the time, living on public lands hard? And no, actually, that is not hard. And let me tell you my story about how I got started, for some people who may not know and who may be thinking about starting out, and maybe you're a little nervous, maybe you are unsure, maybe the big change is a little debilitating, and maybe you're just feeling kind of stuck. When I first decided to live in an RV, I never in a million years thought that I would be living in Alaska for a summer. That was not what I thought my RV life was going to be. what I thought my RV life was going to be. I wanted to be closer to nature. I was sick and tired of paying a ridiculous amount of money to live in a box and not be, not have any space of my own and living in a suburb. And I wanted to be closer to nature. And I thought living in an RV, a nomadic life, would be the way to do it. But how I envisioned my life when I first started was traveling to and from the Bay Area. So being 2, maybe 3 hours away from the Bay Area, keeping my business, keeping my life in the Bay Area, and commuting every 2 or 3 weeks back to the Bay Area. I put most of my clients on virtual, but I figured, you know what, if they still insist on seeing me maybe for a quarterly meeting, and sometimes there was like some big face-to-face roundtable meeting that I needed to be a part of, some brainstorming or some strategic planning or yearly planning that I needed to be a part of. And I thought, if I need to be down there for a quarterly meeting or an annual meeting, I'll be within a couple hours, and I'll commute down to the San Francisco Bay Area. If I have clients who still insist on meeting me once a month, luckily I didn't. They were more than happy to meet by phone and virtually, but I thought if I had to do that, I even kept some of my business clothes. I kept my heels and a couple suits, thinking, I'll go to chamber mixers, and I'll go to chamber mixers up in the Sacramento area or up in the Pollock Pines or what's the other city up there, the bigger one? El Dorado, I guess. I'll go to chamber meetings up there, and I'll do networking up there and continue to, network and market my business in areas that I'll be living closer to, because you can hear I wonder if it's a loon. There's a bird that's been singing. It's beautiful. I wonder if it's a loon. So anyway, I thought I would live in Tahoe National Forest or El Dorado National Forest and commute to the city. So that's really what I thought my life would look like. And I even kept my car, just in case it didn't work out. I kept my car and I kept it in storage. And so I never imagined I would be traveling as extensively as I have traveled the last 2 years. I just really thought that I would commute to the Bay Area from the forest. And I did that for the first few months, and it kind of didn't really work. It's really hard to go from living in the forest, and I really had a hard time finding a cell signal outside of the San Francisco Bay Area, so it was really hard to work. But it's really hard to go from living in the forest, like this, where I never comb my hair because I'm alone most of the time, and who cares? And when I turn on the camera, who cares? To putting on makeup and heels and going and networking. They were just two opposites, and I quickly realized that wasn't going to work for me. And so most of my clients were remote anyway. I wasn't needed for face-to-face meetings, and so I was able to just travel. But that's really what I thought my life would look like in the beginning. And the reason I'm sharing this is because for newbies, I just want to let you know that nothing is set in stone. You might have an idea about what your RV life is going to look like, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be whatever you want it to be. You can make plans now, and you can say, okay, I want to travel the world. I want to travel all the state parks. I want to travel all the national parks. And you get on the road and you're like, oh my God, this is exhausting. You can do something else. You can even go back to your normal life if that's what you choose to do. And that's what helped me get over the fear and the angst of making such a big life change. I told myself, you know what? I'll try it. If it doesn't work, I can go back. And like I said, am I recording? Yeah. And like I said, I even kept my car because, I couldn't be going to meetings in Matilda, especially, right? So much for my image of success. Showing up in Matilda, that kind of didn't go with my image. And so I guess, moving on from it being a hard life, or kind of combining hard life and advice for newbies, the life really is only as hard as you want it to be, I guess, barring mechanical issues, but other than that, I think as long as you're smart, as long as you prepare, as long as you do your homework, as long as you don't do what I did in the beginning, and I've always said since my very first video, I'm a cautionary tale. I fly by the seat of my pants. This is how I live my life. I love risks. I thrive in challenges and facing risks, and that's just how I live my life, but that's not for everyone. So for those of you who are risk averse, and there are a lot of you out there who are very risk averse, because I hear from you all the time, do your homework, do your planning, and just know that nothing is set in stone. If this doesn't work, you can go back. It's not a big deal. It's, I guess unless you're budgetarily challenged, there are a lot of people who live this life who are thinking about this life because basically, because frankly, finances are pushing them in that direction, and they don't really have a choice. Maybe they can't afford to live in normal sticks and bricks. But I also want to tell you that my goal of living in an RV was to start saving money, to start putting away more toward retirement. Instead of spending $1,600, $1,700 a month on rent, I thought I would take that $1,600, $1,700 and put it toward retirement and put it toward savings. Of course, the first year it went into Matilda. And I guess that would be my thought for many of you who are going to be living in an RV because you can't afford to live in an apartment, is that maybe you can tuck some away. Maybe this is just a short-term solution to save money while you live on public lands. And there's just so many options. There's so many ways to do it. It doesn't have to be done one way. You don't have to travel. You don't have to stay in one spot. You can do whatever you want to do. And I think that's that's kind of hard for us to grasp because our lives are so regimented since the day we're born. We go from being born to daycare, to school, to college, to career, to family, and all the responsibilities with family, and our lives are so regimented that I think it might be hard for some of us, for some of us to grasp what freedom really looks like. And what freedom really looks like is today I can do whatever the heck I want, and tomorrow I can do something completely different if I want. And that's how I live my life. So is it a hard life? Mechanical issues are challenging. Traveling all the time, I travel as much or as little as I want to do. I stay one place until I'm sick of staying there, and then I move on. For some people who really want to stay in one place and not travel, and maybe you don't have the means to travel, and you need to move every 2 weeks, I could see how that could be stressful for some. I could see how for those who don't have the finances to travel, who have to live in the desert all year round, I can see how that can be challenging. But I don't think that's really most of my audience. I think most of my audience are going to be retiring with pensions and 401ks and IRAs, and I think most of my audience are going to have the means to be able to live this life the way they want to live it. And for those, I guess for those who don't have the means, who are going to be really restricted by their budgets, I don't know that this life would really be any harder than living in a sticks and bricks being on a budget. In fact, I think that would almost be harder. I've said before, I made pretty decent money throughout my career, and yet I lived paycheck to paycheck. And I've had, especially early, the first couple years in my business, I remember getting down to my last $100 in the bank, being self-employed, having no backup, no savings, having nothing, having $100 in the bank, and rent was due in 2 weeks. And to me, that's a hard life. To me, that's stressful. But if I don't have to pay rent, I don't have that worry anymore. Which life is harder, right? Having to worry about making rent, or just knowing that, okay, or for example, like my trip up here, my trip to Alaska. I had a budget, I think I had $1,500 or something, and I was just like, okay, I travel, I'm going to ration my travel to make that last until I get paid again. And I made it. I stayed some places 3, 4, 5 days, and then I moved, and I was able to ration my money, but I didn't have to worry about that nagging, I owe somebody $1,700 once a month feeling. I don't know. I think no matter what, unless you're completely broken down and you can't move, to me, that's freedom. Not having to worry about that mortgage payment or that rent payment hanging over your head. Really, what's harder? I think especially for those who are living on a budget, to have to think if you're living on Social Security, $600, $700, $800 a month, and you've got a $500 rent payment, that's got to be so stressful. Or you live in an RV and all you have to worry about is food, insurance, you know, you move in maybe 100-mile radius every couple of weeks. I don't know. How hard is that? Am I missing something? I can't imagine what would be hard about it. I don't know. And by hard, do you mean living in an RV? I'm not sure what would be so hard about living in an RV. I have all the comforts of home. I have air conditioning. I have heat. I have a toilet, a full working toilet. I have a shower. I have a microwave, which I don't really use. I have a stove. I have a refrigerator. I have a freezer. So what's so hard about that? Yeah, I have to dump my tanks every couple weeks, and I have to fill up water every couple weeks. But I don't know. That's not hard. And my advice for newbies would be that when I first started out, I was kind of afraid to use everything. I was afraid, like, of running out. I was, like, constantly checking my gauges. Am I going to run out of water? Am I going to run out of propane? Am I going to run out of fuel? Is my black tank going to get full? You know, and that was a constant concern and kind of a constant, like, low-level anxiety for me. And now it's just like, so what? You know what? My freshwater tank has been on empty for 3 days. So what? I'm never more than 2 hours away, 3 hours at the most from fresh water. I'm never more than a day's drive away. And no matter what, I'm never more than a couple hours away from a store where I can buy a gallon of water. And I think that my advice for newbies on that, would be not to worry about it. I mean, unless you're on a 4-wheel drive and you're going 3 days off the grid, remote, and you really need to worry about these things, then you don't need to worry about them. And I can't think of anybody who lives in a Class C or a Class A who really is ever going to be more than a few hours away from all the amenities and everything that you need to survive. So don't worry about it. So what? So what if you run out of propane? Well, you probably don't want to run out of propane in the middle of that would kind of suck. So that's one thing I do before I go to bed at night, I guess. I make sure I have enough propane if I need to run my heater all night, and I make sure I have enough water for coffee. Water and propane for coffee, because propane runs my stove. Those are my two biggest concerns. If I can get up in the morning and make a cup of coffee and not freeze overnight, then I can drive wherever I need to drive the next day and fill up on my services. So that's not a hard life. I used to also worry that it was going to be really hard to find dump stations and water, and it's not. Every city in every state, I've been to, 25 states now. I've never, ever, ever had a problem finding fresh water or dump stations. Sometimes, some states you have to look a little harder than others. Here in Alaska, super easy. Everywhere you go, gas stations have fresh water and free dump stations. Arizona, where all the places that really cater to RVers and snowbirds, super easy. I'm trying to think of any challenges I've ever had. There's always state parks. State parks always have dump stations. I'm pretty sure in every single state I've been to, state parks. So that was another kind of reason for me to kind of have a little bit of anxiety. It's like, oh my God, where am I going to dump? Oh my God, where am I going to get fresh water? Sure, sometimes you have to pay for it. $10. I think the most I've ever paid is 18, maybe 20 for fresh water and dump station, and that was probably at a resort. But yeah, if you think those things are hard, then yeah, I guess this is a hard life. But I also think that things like having to fill up my generator with gas and coming out and putting out the awning. And then when the wind starts, I have to pull my awning in, and pulling into a new spot every couple weeks, and monitoring all of my sensors to make sure I don't run out of water, and dumping my tanks. To me, that is part of a life, of a more active life. I don't think it's hard, but I think it's more being a participant in my life. I don't think I was a participant in my life when I was going to work, going from point A to point B, from point A to point B, from point A to point B, to point C to the gym, to point D to take Capone for a walk, I was a hamster in a wheel. Point A, point B, point C, point A, point B. I was a hamster doing the same thing every day. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was bored and I was on the couch watching other people live. I was watching Life Below Zero, which I'm actually kind of watching again now because I'm so close. I'm in Alaska. Not that I never watch TV. I do. I just don't watch as much. But I was, spinning in a hamster wheel, and to check out or to relax, I was watching TV, watching reality shows, watching other people live their lives. So I think I think our modern life is too easy. I think that when life is too easy, when all we have to do is to go to the grocery store to, buy our meat and to buy our produce, and, we can go to the gym and get out of the weather to ride the treadmill, and we never have to worry about rain or, except driving in it maybe 10 minutes to the gym, or, we never have to think about where our electricity comes from. We never have to think about where our water comes from. We never have to think about our sewage unless, something breaks. I think that's too easy. And I don't think humans are meant to live such an easy life. I think that's why we have a lot of the problems in our society that we have. I think we're bored. I think as a society, I think as a culture, I think we're bored. Everything is too easy. And so what do? We go out of our way to try to find things to inspire us and to get our adrenaline pumping, right? No matter what that is, whether it's drugs, alcohol, spending, overeating, or trolling the internet, whatever it is. I think we're so bored and we're so unfulfilled and we're so unsatisfied in our lives that we are going out of our way to find something to get us charged up because life is too easy. Everything is easy. We go to bed in a nice, comfy, cozy bed every night with regulated heat, piped in air, fake light, food in the refrigerator. And it's so easy that we have no challenges in life. And so we need to do something. We need to spark something to make us feel alive. And I think that's probably part of the reason there's so much disease, so much addiction, and so much dysfunction in our society is because we're trying to fill that void. We have evolved over millennia. Our ancestors had to fight to survive. There were a lot of elements against us in nature, in the wilderness, in our efforts to evolve into human beings and to survive. And technology and all of the things that are a regular part of our lives now have evolved extremely fast, and I don't believe humans have caught up to that. I believe that humans are way, way, way behind on the evolutionary scale as far as our instincts and who we were and who we are, as primates. I don't think we've caught up to what technology and what our lives are today. And so when people tell me, isn't that a hard life? I think this is closer to how we're supposed to be living. And from what I've seen here in Alaska, people living in the bush and hunting their own food, fishing for their own food, and trapping and skinning and freezing and, growing their own vegetables, that is even closer to what I believe humans are meant to be doing. And I'm just not even close to that. My dream of living in an RV and being close to nature and really having more of a rugged life. I'm not. I have a cushy life. My life is pretty cushy. I have all the comforts of home. I don't know. I don't think it's a hard life. I think maybe in some ways it's a little bit more challenging. And like I said, I feel a little bit more like an active participant in my daily life than I did in my old life, because I do have to think about things more. I have to think about where my electricity is coming from and my water and my food, and I have to plan. And if that's hard to you, then that might be something that you want to consider before going out on an RV. But if that's something to you that makes you feel like it might give your life purpose and might give you, being, like I said, more of an active participant in life rather than a passive participant in our life, because that's what I think I used to be, just a passive participant in my own life. But if you think you want to be more active and move around and meet new people and see new things, then yeah, I don't think it's a hard life. I think this is a little bit closer to the life that maybe humans were meant to live. I don't know. Does that make sense? It might be a stretch. I'm a little distracted right now by that bird. Love Alaska. All right. So I guess my advice for newbies was covered in that. Don't fret the small stuff. You know what, even if you run out of stuff, so what? Just make sure you have enough supplies to get through a day. That's all you really need to worry about. You know, if coffee is important to you, just make sure you have enough water in your tank, or you have a spare gallon with you at all times. Make sure you have enough propane. I actually have my backpacking equipment with me, so I have my little pocket rocket backpacking stove and a little canister of propane. Worst case scenario, my propane tank, my onboard runs out, I can always make a coffee on my backpacking stove. And so maybe that would make you feel better. You know, always have backup. Carry a fuel can, carry, you know, if you want to carry a little stove, you know, to make sure you have that on board. Carry a couple extra gallons in case you run out in your onboard water tank. But that, you know, just be prepared, do your homework, don't fear the small stuff. You're gonna run out of stuff. It's no big deal. When you are getting low, make sure you know where your next source is. And like I said, it's not that hard to find dump stations and water. It really isn't. But, you know, I've covered that. There's Santa Dumps app, I think, is the one, an RV dump station. Just Google RV dump stations near me, and there's 2 apps that come up, and I can't remember what they are. One is better than the other. I think I've done videos on that, and I'll try to find it and put a link up here. How's that? But that's my advice for newbies. Don't fear. Just don't fret. Shit's gonna happen. You can worry about it all day long and spend all your time worrying, or you could just live your life and deal with it when it comes. Yeah, I'm not sure I covered any of past existential stuff on that. You know what, I think I did. I think I did cover, you know, about in the beginning and how to get over the fear and how to get over the hurdle, and that, you know, nothing is set in stone and that you can always change your mind. Every day I change my mind. Every day I'm like, you know what, I'm going to stay another day. And then I wake up in the morning and say, yeah, you know what, I'm ready to go. Sometimes at noon I'll be like, yeah, I thought I was going to stay, but you know what, I think I want to go. So nothing is set in stone. You do what you want when you want, really, for the most part. All right. And that brings me to the third question, is how do I decide where to go? I get that question all the time. With all this great, beautiful, wonderful, big United States, how do I decide where I'm going to go next? And, you know, I had to think about that because I don't plan. Many of you know I'm not a planner. You see that in my videos. I don't plan my videos. I just shoot my life. I'm like, oh, this is pretty. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is cool. And then later I go back and sometimes I do research and sometimes I don't. You know, I don't plan. I'm not a planner. I've never been a planner. I'm also not a huge attention to detail. I'm not a detail-oriented person at all. I hate details. I remember I was a project manager for a company many, many years ago, and I worked with a manager of another department. We worked close. I was a client liaison. He was the production liaison, and so we often had to coordinate together, and I often had to talk to him about his team, getting his team on board to work with my client. And if there was a problem, something went really, really wrong with a client, and I'd go to him and I'd be like, Dave, what the heck? You know, we've got a problem here with the client. How are we going to fix it? And he'd be like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that, and this is how it happened. And I'd be like, la, 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 la. Dave, I don't want to hear the details. Just tell me how you're going to fix it. And that's just the kind of person I am. And he always said, you know, I love that about you. You know, you were kind of tough, but you were always respectful about it. And, you know, you always got the job done. And in the end, the client was always happy. But that's just who I am. I am not a detail person at all. I don't care about the details. Just tell me how it's going to get done. And so, you know, and that's how I live my life. I don't stress about the details. I just say, you know, do I want to go today or do I not want to go today? Like today I am moving. I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. I'm going to see how the day unfolds and I'll figure it out sometime later. But I do get this. I'll try to answer the question of how do I decide where I want to go? If I don't have a specific destination in mind for a specific reason, if I'm not battling weather, changes of seasons, if I'm not trying to escape heat or cold, you know, like in the desert, if I'm trying to escape heat, I'm going to go to a higher elevation. If I'm trying to escape cold, I'll go to a lower elevation and I'll start heading south. But if I don't have a specific destination in mind, or even if I do, oftentimes what dictates where I'm going to go is whether or not there's camping. And that really is probably the simplest answer I can give you for how I decide where I'm going to go. no matter what I want to do in this life, whether it's sightseeing or seeing a new state or seeing a new city or seeing a new area, it all really depends on whether or not I can find camping. As you know, I don't like staying in RV parks. I hate RV parks. I'm not a huge fan of campgrounds. State parks are okay sometimes, but I'd rather not stay in a campground. So when I'm trying to decide where to go, I'm going to look for good boondocking. And my first go-to resource is usually freecampsites.net. And again, I just use that as a guide. Is there at least boondocking in the area? That has really helped me here in Alaska, for example. It's like, okay, I want to go see Anchorage. Is there any boondocking there? No, not really. I can't even stay in Walmart there. So, okay, well, I want to see Anchorage. So that means if I go to Anchorage, I'm either, one, going to have to figure out how to stealth camp, or I'm going to have to stay outside of Anchorage an hour, maybe an hour and a half, which means I'll probably just go into Anchorage for a day or two and sightsee. 3, I might have to stay in a campground or an RV park, which I'll do in a pinch. But most of the time, when I'm not sightseeing, like I have been here in Alaska, if I'm just living, that's another thing. Let me talk about that. This isn't a vacation. A lot of people see the RV, they see me traveling, and they automatically think it's vacation, and it's not. It's life. I'm not looking for vacation type stuff. Sightseeing, honestly, is not my favorite thing in the world. I don't like going where the crowds are. I don't like touristy places. I don't like tourist attractions. This channel is really more about life than it is about travel videos, and that's a whole other subject that we should talk about later. I don't know how I kind of got on the whole travel video thing. That was never what I intended to do. But yeah, there have been times that I've kind of gone places just thinking, oh, it'll make good video, but that's really not my thing. I'm out here really just trying to live my life. And live in nature and live close to public lands. And so most of the time, if I'm not thinking about video content and if I'm not sightseeing, I'm really just looking for a national forest or BLM land, something where I can stay and be legal and safe for 7 to 10 days, because that's usually about my limit. So that's usually how I find my next camp, or how I decide where I'm going to go next. Where's the good camping? That's it. I want my 3 things, right? Solitude, solar for sun, and cell signal. What? Signal. Solar. So sun, solitude, and signal. Those are the 3 things I look for when I'm deciding where I want to go. I need those 3 things. Actually, the cell signal, I'm trying to get away from that a little bit more because I have been too tied to the internet, and I'm trying to kind of break that habit a little bit and get back to the real reason I'm out here, and that is to be away from a lot of the hamster wheel of life. It's really easy to get caught up in that again. For those of you who think that, coming out here is one big giant vacation, it's not. It's still life. And I'm not out here on vacation. I'm out here living my life. And so when I'm trying to find places to camp, I'm looking for places to live for 7 to 14 days at a time, or, a day to 14 days at a time. And that's how I decide where I'm going to go next, unless I'm sightseeing. And, well, I guess sightseeing is its own thing. I mean, it's like, okay, I want to see Anchorage. Okay, I want to see Fairbanks. Okay, I want to see Valdez. Okay, I want to see some glaciers. So that dictates where I'm going to go. But if I'm not sightseeing, it really just is a matter of where can I find the best camping? Where can I find all the things I need to do? Oh, and hiking. I'm always looking for good walking. So a lot of times I'll leave a camp just for that reason. I'll get somewhere and it's like, oh, there's no good camping here, and so I'll leave. Or no good walking here, and so I'll leave. Good walking is really important to me. In Alaska, it's really tough because there's not a lot of trails, and I don't like bushwhacking. The bushes and the weeds here are like up to here. So unless there are roads or trails, I can't just go really traipsing off into the woods. I could, but it's really hard. Okay, that was a lot of information. So is this a hard life? I guess that depends on your definition of hard. My advice for newbies, don't fret the small stuff. Don't worry about using your stuff. It's either going to break or it's not. Just use it. You know, there's no sense of worrying about it. And make sure you just maintain things and know how your systems work. And I did a video on that. So I think it was RV Electrical Made Simple. Great video. I actually had to re-upload it, but make sure you check that out. It's a really good video. It had a total, I don't know if it matters. The first video had like 15,000 views, but then the audio was off, and so I had to reload it. So it looks like it only has 10,000, but it was a lot more popular video than it looks. A really good video for understanding how your RV systems work, so go ahead and check that out. And so don't fret the small stuff. Always just plan ahead. You need to plan ahead a little bit. And I'm not a planner. I am not a planner. I hate details, and I'm thriving out here. And so if you are a planner and if you love the details, this life is going to be like totally easy for you, I think. But if you're risk averse, if you are a routine, well, even if you're a routine-oriented person, you know, I mean, and again, there's a million different ways to live in an RV. You don't have to live in an RV the way I do. You don't have to live on public lands. You don't have to be totally like RV park averse like I am. There's a million ways to live in an RV, and I think my advice to you would be just to make your life what you want it, not what you think it should be. Don't model your life after mine or anybody else you see on YouTube or anywhere else. Model your life after you and what makes you happy. And know that that can change from day to day, from minute to minute, from week to week. It's up to you. You know, I mean, this is a journey. Nothing is set in stone. This is a journey. Live every day to the fullest. And make every day what you want it to be. That's it. Okay, I hope that episode of FAQ was really helpful to you. I love talking about this stuff, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for all of you who support me and support my channel. If you found this video helpful and you want to be a part of my life, which is really what this is about, and continue to hear inspiration, motivation, and you know, maybe some pretty places along the way, then I hope that you will consider subscribing and hitting the thumbs up for liking this video. And was there anything else? Be sure to check your, if you think you're subscribed but you're not getting notifications, be sure to check your notifications. Make sure you're still subscribed. YouTube is unsubscribing people. Just one of the many lovely, wonderful things about YouTube. So be sure you're still subscribed. Be sure you click the bell, and be sure to click the gear up in your tools section. I don't know, your notifications, the little gear. Make sure you have notifications turned on. So just clicking the bell, one of my viewers pointed that out recently. You can tell, I don't really use YouTube. I post videos, but I'm not like a huge YouTube watcher. But just clicking the bell and hitting subscribe are not enough. You actually have to go to the gear. You have to change your notification settings to make sure you are set up to receive notifications, okay? So I'm not unsubscribing anybody. I wish I could, but I can't. Never mind. I love my life and I love my job. Okay. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Thank you for being a part of my journey here, and I will see you next time. In the meantime, be happy, be free, and be kind. Mwah. See you soon.